see any more people coming down the hall, so I think we'll get it started. Good afternoon. I'm Lou Alfonso, your EAC Vice President for about the next 2 days. This is our beginning today of our educational seminars. As you know, EAC sponsors them at every convention, and we have some really great speakers this year. Our first speaker is going to be, today is going to be Bob Klosterboer. As you know, he's our president-elect for EAC, and we'll be giving a talk, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then we'll have another one at 2 o'clock by Frank Knoll, which is going to be really interesting on comparing the collections of Louis Ellsberg and a guy by the name of Williams. And you'd be surprised on the comparisons of those two collections, and he's doing it as a copper edition. At 3 o'clock, Jerry Shabal is going to be talking about messed up dyes, and really has some unusual dyes to talk about, and also it's an amusing talk. So I ask you to consider attending all of them today. And tomorrow we also have some great talks. At 1 o'clock we got Bill Eckberg, our former president, who Bill is going to be talking about coinage dyes and also coinage photography. You'll learn a lot by listening to Bill, and also about the photography. 2 o'clock, Chuck Heck is going to talk about the Walter Husek Liberty Cap Foundation. Walter had and has some fantastic coins which are part of the foundation. What's going to happen to them now? Come tomorrow at Chuck's talk, you'll find out. 3 o'clock tomorrow, Colonel Steve Ellsworth, former president of the ANA, is going to be talking, and he's been a member of ANA, of our group, for a long, long time. He's going to be talking on security, and that's something that you need to sit in on and get some great ideas of protecting yourself, your family, and your coin collection. So suggest you may want to make arrangements to attend all of these. So now our first speaker for today, as I mentioned, is Bob. And Bob is going to present on the advantages of collecting varieties of early copper in today's age versus 40 or 50 years ago. Bob's been a member of EAC since 1987. He's collected all aspects of early copper. He currently focuses his attention on large cents by varieties and die states. Now, Bob says his presentation is intended to be interactive. So he says if you have any questions or some comments, feel free to make them during his talk. Put your hand up, and Bob will recognize you. So we'll get started with Bob, and thank you very much, folks.
Well, I've never done a talk at the EAC before. Lou reached out to me and asked me if I'd be willing to do a short presentation, maybe if there was anybody that did it. And I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? Because there are obviously a lot of learned people in this organization, and a lot of information. And I thought, something I've been thinking about quite a bit is variety collecting today versus variety collecting when I started, or variety collecting prior to my starting even. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and I'm going to try and make the case that we're awfully well off right now based on the work and the effort that people before us and some people in this room have done as far as helping us be able to identify varieties and really understand what we're collecting. The pictures, I always put a few pictures in because that keeps people's attention a little bit as you're going through. Not all of the pictures are from the same place. They're all from my collection, but they're not all. Some of them are PCGS photos, some are Goldberg photos. Most of them are my photos, but some heritage photos probably along the way. So when I started thinking about collecting, there are a number of keys to, why do we collect things? Why do people collect things? And the first one is, I think you just have a desire to collect. There are people that want to, some people accumulate. Hopefully, My personal path, I think, has gone from accumulation to collection a little bit. But then there's also, you have to be able to identify what you want to collect. If you want two of something, you need to know why you're getting two. Is one of them different than the other one? If you're trying to buy silver dollars, you should know what the silver content and things are. You should be able to identify whatever it is that you want to collect. And then you have to have access to the collectible. Yeah, it has to be, it's no fun collecting something if you could never buy one or never get one for your collection. Then of course there's grading and valuation, certainly in today's world, but all through history, there are costs associated with collecting anything, whether it's the price of the coin or whether it's the trade-off of getting something else for your collection, or some new tires for the car, or whatever that cost is. There's always some cost to it, and then there's sort of your goals and keeping score. I think one of the differences between a collection and an accumulation is you start with some sort of goal in mind, and how do you figure out what those goals should be, and how do you know when you've done that? So, this is from Mr. Sheldon. He said, generations of Americans maintained a curious affection for the old pennies of the early years of the country. This affection for early coppers has not as a rule particularly been associated with general interest in numismatics or with hobbies or with the disease of collecting. I think what we do has a lot to do with interest in numismatics and hobbies and the disease of collecting. So there are very few things that Dr. Sheldon says that I take exception to, but I do think back in that time, there were a lot of people that just enjoyed looking at old coppers. I hear stories about someone that had a shoebox with old coppers in it, and they'd get out and take a look at them and stuff, and those people that started doing that, immediately recognized there were differences. And, fortunately for us, being able to identify collectibles started a long time ago. It was, we've got, in 1869, Cosby did the 93s, Vic and Maris started doing 94s, and people started cataloging coins by different varieties. They started, the first people that were given an excuse to buy more than one. I guess, like I said, gee, this one is a lot different. If you look at those two 1794s, one of them she has tears down her face. The other one has great big cheeks, apple cheeks, and the dates aren't the same space. And it'd be pretty easy, even if you were just looking at remember, you're in the 1860s. We don't have LED or incandescent lighting. If you're sitting at night, you're looking at coppers by candlelight or oil lamps, And so the subtle differences we look at today in, let's say, late date large sets to do attribution, those might not have been very obvious by candlelight or by whale oil lamps or something. But then in the 40s. There was sort of what I think is kind of the first Renaissance. I mean, before Newcomb and Sheldon, we had Dowdy, we had certainly a number, Clapp, and a number of people that had done sets of coins. You could do 96s, you could do 94s, you could Hayes, you could do, but really in the 40s, all of a sudden, Sheldon comes out with early cents, and it was all of the early cents. It was all the way from 93 to 1814, and then Newcomb piggybacks on Andrew's work, and he comes out with 1840 to 1857. So all of a sudden they had resources to go out and attribute coins, and that may have been the golden age of cherry picking coins. But I'm not sure it was the golden age of collecting coins, because I don't know if any of you have tried to attribute late dates using Newcomb's work. I have, and it's catch as catch can. Those were a major step forward in information available to collectors. But and there were, some auction catalogs that would have some plates, but the plates were a little fuzzy, and you could maybe see if there was a mark on the coin in a certain place and try and trace it back through time. One of the things that happened as this club was formed, though, was Pennywise came about. And all of a sudden there was a forum for everybody to exchange information. And I know when I first started collecting is before John had done his book, but he was putting the middle dates in Pennywise. You'd get 1 year or 2 years each thing of Pennywise, and we all had those 3-ring punched and put in a binder so we could try and attribute middle dates, from the work that John was doing. But again, it wasn't ideal. But then all of a sudden the 90s came, and we had John's book, we had some books from Bill, Bob Grellman, and later the Breen books, and all of a sudden we knew we could all of a sudden start to attribute die varieties. We had great, big, nice, sharp pictures to look at and descriptions of what we should be looking at. And as I was coming in, somewhere in between there, information became more available. Numa study, if for any of you that haven't had access or looked at Numa study, it's an incredible assemblage of photos of coins from 1793 to 1857. You can argue or agree or not agree about the grades or the order of the coins, but you have pictures of the coins, so you can look at all the coins. Then there's specialty references now. John Connor came out a book just on 1816s. Chuck Heck's die state book on 1794s. So if you really want to focus in on something, not everybody wants to collect from, by die variety from 1793 to 1857. You may just like a year or one of each year or however you want to collect. But now there are more and more of those types of references as well. And the other thing, and we'll talk about the internet a little bit more later, but having dark side and having a place to go to and look to see if there are counterfeit coins out there and things we should be watchful for. Again, it's a resource that certainly didn't exist 20 years ago, and probably didn't exist 10 years ago. So now we can identify what we want to collect, but having access to the collectibles. When I was starting, it was, you go to the shop or you go to the show. And, there were local coin shops, small regional coin shows. There were fixed price lists from a number of dealers, Rod Burris, Chris McCauley. People would send out fixed price lists, but there were no photos. There were just descriptions and their opinion of what the grade was of the coin. There were major copper auctions every 2 or 3 years. We had Star and a couple of others. Then we had Robbie Brown. Then we had Jack Robinson and Bob Matthews, and then we had Robbie Brown again. But these auctions were 2 or 3 years apart. And so if you were, I got involved in copper when I was in Michigan, and there were a lot of those local shops and local shows and stuff. And then my work moved me to Idaho, and there were no coins. There were no shows. There were no shops. So I lived on the ads in the back of Pennywise. Every time Pennywise would come, first thing I would do is go back there and see who was selling something. Rod Burris's price lists he sent out, Chris McCauley's price lists they sent out, and again, that was what was available to you. Look at what we have now, and there is more copper material out there for sale at any moment in time right now than I think I even knew there were large cents at some point. eBay, and whether you like it or not, they've got fixed price lists and auctions. There's over 30,000 large cents on eBay right now as we speak. Now, some of those may or may not fit into your collecting purview, but they're there. And if you want to just go through and attribute large cents and practice attributing large cents, you can attribute a lot of large cents. I remember Bob Matthews used to give me a box once in a while of unattributed large cents, and I'd go back to my house and I'd sit down with my books and I would try and figure out how to attribute coins, because we just didn't have access to that kind of material. But now you can do whatever you want. There's dealer websites, fantastic pictures, a lot of dealers you've never even heard of have websites out there with copper on. CoinCube Trading that Greg Hannigan sponsored, it's a forum for people to exchange information. It's a good, if you want to sell a coin, or there are coins out there that you can buy, but it's a social media site, which that was new to pretty much everybody in this room. There's a social media site for copper. Collector's Corner is another online sort of shop, and there are, I would say, probably 10,000 large cents on half cents and large cents together on Collector's Corner. Some of them may be the same ones that are on eBay, or they may be some of the same ones that are on a collector's or an individual dealer site, but they're there. We have over 100 auctions a year now, and I think it's probably closer to 150 auctions a year that contain some amount of copper. There's great collections every Sunday night, and every Sunday night they probably have 80 to 100 half cents and large cents in their sale. Again, not everything's for everybody that's there, but they're there. Heritage has a auction every Tuesday night, online only auction. So there's 52 a year. I think even if that happened to land on Christmas, that auction happens. So there's 100 auctions, but then there's all the yearly cents auctions, the Heritage, the Stacks, great collections, as I said, iCollector, and a number of others. There are auctions that I was looking at some coins in a small community auction in Portland, Maine the other day. There were 4 or 5 large cents in there. Alan turned me on to a site or an auction house in Australia where they were auctioning things. So just the access to the collectible, the ability to go out and find something you want to collect, I think is better than it's ever been. So now, rarity, grading, and cost, and those are all sort of things. The rarity scale has pretty much been the same since the 40s, since Dr. Sheldon put together the R1 through R8. The rarity of given varieties has not stayed the same. With the advent of having access to all this material, coins that when I started out were R6s or R5 pluses are now R4 minuses, so you have to be a little bit careful depending on the vintage of the references that you're looking at. Even the most recent CQRs and stuff, the rarity ratings are probably a little overstated because of the number of coins that have shown up as everything's been put out. So, and then there's condition rarity. Their coin may have been an R6 and now it's an R4 plus, but the best one still may be a fine 15, and then it drops down to a 10 and then to a 6 and then to a 3 or something, and then there's 50 coins that are between 2 and 3. So condition rarity is important to understand as rarity is, and that's one of the things that you do get if you look at a lot of coins, you look at a lot of auctions, or you look at the Numa study or something like that. You get a pretty good feel for, am I going to be able to buy a better coin than this or not? Or do I really want to spend, 4 figures for a coin that's 2 points better so that it's in the CC than the coin that I have? So you have to think about that. Grading has been both clarified and confused, I think, over time. If you haven't seen the EAC grading guide, the book, you should at least get your hands on one and look at it. If you can buy one, you should buy one, I think. To me, net grading is, people say it's an art. I think it's a very personal thing. There are things, I know people that if there's a scratch on the coin, they won't own the coin. If there's a rim bump on the coin, they won't own the coin. If the color's not just, everybody kind of has their own sort of foibles when it comes to net grading. But what I do, and what I've been able to do both with the Numa study and with the grading guide, is I'll take a look at a coin, and maybe it's a 40 sharpness coin, and I think it's maybe a 20 net coin, because that's my personal opinion. And again, a lot of these things are, some people's personal opinions we value more than others, but they're personal opinions when it comes to the coin. But I look at the grading guide and I'll say, okay, this is a 20, and then I'll look at the grading guide and I'll look at the 20 and I'll go, would I rather have this coin or that 20? And I'm like, oh boy, I'd probably rather have that 20. And so, would I rather have this coin or that 15? Maybe I'm getting a little bit closer. And so, for me, the net grade of that coin might be 40 net 15. for somebody else that it may have a problem and he actually likes it better or as well as the 20 coin, it may be a little bit different. And so we can all argue about that. We don't have to. I tell people all the time, it's kind of like dating. If we all wanted the same girl, we'd be in a lot of trouble because there would just be the one, you know, and copper is that way a little bit. You know, if we all had to have the same one, you know, it would be kind of unfortunate. But then third-party grading has come in, and it doesn't matter ones you look at, whether they're in old holders or new holders, whether they've got a green jelly bean on them or a star at the end of the grade or a PQ at the end of the grade or whatever it is. You know, I look at third-party grading not as an evil thing, not as a salvation for the hobby. Before there was third-party grading, you'd go to a coin show and you'd look at a dealer's case and you'd look at his coins and he'd have a grade on most of them. And you could decide whether you agreed with the dealer's grade or not. And if you thought his coins were all a little overgraded, you'd kind of make that adjustment in your mind. You know, there's no point arguing with him about it, but that's kind of, or if you thought they were undergraded, you might make an adjustment in your mind. Because again, remember, these grades are somewhat subjective. I see that the same thing with third-party grading. Why, you know, a dealer who, you know, like, let's say, pick on Chris for a minute, somebody that's handled hundreds of thousands of large cents, puts a grade on it. Now, I might not agree with his grade, but that's his grade, you know, and that's kind of the way I feel about NGC or PCGS or these other guys. It's somebody's opinion of the grade. You know, there was no divine intervention in them coming up with that grade. So you should still look at it and go through the same process you went through when you were just buying raw coins from dealers and say, yeah, I think this one's a little generous. I think this one's a little conservative. But I don't think we have to argue about it. And then, of course, there's Scudsy, average, choice, which, you know, we all in here know absolutely make a difference in the desirability of a coin. How much it makes a difference to the desirability, again, kind of depends on what your collecting goals are, what bothers you the most. What's a Scudsy coin? You know, I remember a politician one time made the comment about pornography. He goes, I can't define it for you, but I know it when I see it. And that's kind of like a Scudsy coin. I can't necessarily define it for you, but I know it when I see it. You know, when I see one. But that doesn't necessarily mean the coin's uncollectible. There are some varieties that, in my humble opinion, you know, 99% of the coins are Scudsy that are of that variety. That's just how they come. So, but yeah, if you want to buy choice coins in VG10 for the whole Sheldon series, I hope you're really taking good care of yourself, because you're going to have a long, long, long road in front of you to do that. And then there's price, value, cost. You know, so those are different things. You know, that you could say the coin has this value, or certainly it's at this price. But then what's the cost? You know, if I buy Walter's 18B out of his sale, again, let's just go crazy and say I could buy that coin. The cost to my collection would be enormous, because I would have to forego any more coins for the next 6 years. You know, I would not be able to, or I might have to sell some coins that I like. You know, but there's a cost to that. There's a cost to acquiring a particular piece for your set that's different than the price, and it's different than the value of the coin. You know, we used to have CQR and penny prices, as I mentioned. They're both pretty much obsolete. Auction archives can be useful when you use caution, you know, because some auctions just don't do as well as others. So you see a coin there and you go, well, this should always be at this price now. Or it could be an auction where everything brought great money, or two of us nuts wanted the same coin and ran it all the way up to twice. Then you go in and say, well, this is what that coin's worth now. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but at least it's what somebody did pay for that coin at one time. And then there's PC price guides, dealer price lists, but experience and study, really. You know, like I said, if you know that the best one is a 12 and you've got a 3 and you really want a 12, you're probably going to have to pay for it. You know, it's a CC coin, which again, you can sort of throw most of the price guides out of the window in some of the CCs, especially the high CCs, but that's what's there. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I think I'm getting behind. No, not really. So goals and keeping score. How do we know if we have a good collection? Again, I think that answer is as varied as the people that are in this room. You know, I have very good friends that collect Red Book variety sets. They may have a Library of Coins album that they're trying to have all the holes in. Somebody else may want all the die states and die varieties of 1817. Or they may want all of the coins from the Homer Downing sale in 1794 with the yellow ink on. Or they, you know, but people as they kind of decide what to collect, again, that's sort of a variable thing. There's not a certain, well, this is the right way to collect copper and this is the wrong way to collect copper. Now, your collection may not be the same as my collection, and you may not want any of the coins that I'm going after, but again, that's okay because, you know, we can't all have the same ones anyway. One thing that we do have now is a lot of published census and collection data. If you look at the score that Alan Ross puts together, you know, he updates it every year, you can get an idea again of that condition rarity. If everybody on the front page, no one has better than a 12, that's probably a pretty hard coin to get in VF20, you know, or maybe it doesn't exist. But those are really, if you contribute, all of these things are free. If you contribute your information, they send you the update every year. And it's a great reference to look at, not necessarily am I number 6 or number 7 or number 42 or number 43, but how many people actually have a 39N12? Well, I don't know what it is. Probably everybody now. When I started, it was probably maybe a third of the people in the list that John Wright started, had a 39N12 because they were really tough back then. But now probably everyone has one, but maybe the average grade's only a 7 out of all of it. You know, so again, it's information. It's information you can use as you're trying to assemble and figure out what you want to collect. Al Boca's got the great provenance on the census of 1794, and he's got a spreadsheet. And again, you can kind of look if, you know, Walter or Terry don't have a nice one. There might not be any nice ones, you know, or you know, there's certainly registry set information out there at PCGS and these guys, and you can go out and you can see registry sets people put together. That's one way people collect. There's certainly coin albums. If all the holes are full, you've completed the Library of Coins album, you know. There's guidebook or red book as we used to call it, you know. I want all the red book varieties, but there are a lot of different ways that you can, I guess, mark time or grade how well you're doing in your collection. But it's a very personal thing. And then, as I say, evaluate your progress against your collecting goals. You know, don't evaluate your progress against somebody else's collection because you'll just get depressed and you'll probably sell your coins and quit collecting early copper. You know, I've seen it happen. I've seen people say, well, I'm never going to have the same kind of collection that Fred Borchert has. So, you know, why should I buy? I'm never going to have a collection like John Wright's collection or Wes Rasmussen's collection or Dan Holmes' collection. You know, evaluate it against your collecting goals. You know, if your goal again is to have as many varieties as you can get in nice VF20 or fine 12, that's the goal. And fortunately, we have a tremendous amount of information and opportunity to try and reach those goals nowadays. Whoops, wrong button, Bob. So in conclusion, I think information on varieties is now extremely abundant. For those of us in the room, it's hard to imagine having better access to literature than is out there right now. I'm sure somebody will come up with something someday, as I said, but you know, if you know, the information, the books are there, there's online forums, you know, the Large Cent Facebook page, if you got a coin, you don't know what it is, they just take a picture and send it out there and somebody will come in and say, oh, you know, I think you got one of these, or I think, you know, so you can get help from one another. Access to copper is better than ever. It's not all a panacea though, because I think one of the things that's really important to the way we collect, and I'm speaking for myself for sure, but us in general, is mentorship is very important to the early copper community. It's part of why all of us are at EAC in Portland this week, because we like the camaraderie, we like to be with one another, we like to learn from one another. When I started collecting, I said, remember I said shops and regional shows. Well, you can go to a coin shop. I could go to Bob Matthews' coin shop, and Bob would sit down for an hour with me and show me the differences in varieties and things, and I might buy a $15 coin, because that was about my budget back then. That's hard to find today. Mom and pop coin shops are kind of going away as the way of the dodo. If you go to big shows, the dealers are so busy, they really don't have time to spend 45 minutes or an hour talking to you about a coin. They would like to, but they're there, they've spent a small fortune to be there for their tables and everything. And it's really an industry kind of event. I think it's something that as the EAC we need to think about. Should we have some kind of a mentoring program where we try and help people out? Because it certainly made a difference in, I would have never collected large cents by variety if it hadn't been for Bob Matthews. Absolutely, I can say almost unequivocally that wouldn't have happened. So we need to think about that, because I think as much, we can go online, we can do internet auctions, we can do all this stuff, but that feedback of, gee, what do you think about this coin? Or, we have pockets of that, but we need to think about how we make that more accessible, I think, to our general membership. And then we have to remember, collecting's an individual endeavor. It's fun to compare, it's fun to know when something is of interest in your collection, but it's your collection. You may have collecting goals that you've set for yourself in the beginning. They may be different from somebody else's, but don't judge your collection against your goals against somebody else's goals. I think, sure, it'd be nice to say, oh, I've got better coins than Nafsker had, and but I don't think there are very many of us that would ever be able to say that. So whatever those goals are, whatever's going to make you happy, keep you lathered up and wanting to come back again for the next show or to buy the next auction or the coin, we have to think about those things. And that's really all that I wanted to show something. I didn't pull it up when I was on that slide, but something as simple as the EAC sale. So this is the 89 EAC sale in Cincinnati. Great, Steve Fisher did the artwork, and these came out every year. Wherever you were, there was regional artwork and stuff. It was really cool. But this is what you got to decide whether you wanted to bid on a coin or not. And depending on who was cataloging the coin that year, you might or might not have any idea what you were actually bidding on if you couldn't go to the show and look at the coins. Now, we have this. We have the EAC catalog for this year that Early Sense put together. And, every lot is plated. We've got giant pictures. We've got great provenances. And if for some reason you can't come to Portland this week, which obviously from the size of our attendance there were a number of people that couldn't, you can still actively participate in the EAC sale, because you can look at the coin and decide how it's going to fit into your collection or not fit into your collection. So that's just an example of how things have sort of developed and why why I think these are the golden years of variety collecting. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions people have. Yeah.
A comment and a question. If I
Sure.
may. First of all, great job.
Oh, thanks.
I would argue it's the golden age of copper.
Yeah.
That's what you convinced me of.
Yeah.
But I do have a question related to the intersection of the golden age of varieties and the Red Book. Not so much the auctions anymore, but the grading outfits, they aren't on board as much when it comes to variety identification and
Yeah, and you have to be.
Certainly did it for a while. Now that's waning.
Yeah, it seems to become a little more or less popular depending on what they're selling, whether there will be a variety associated with the coin, whether or not there will be a EAC grade associated with the coin that's in a given auction. Some auction companies are very, very diligent in that. Some other auction companies are, if you're at Rarities Night. some other, but maybe not on the online only auction. So again, I think you're right. You still have to kind of sift through and figure that out. Fortunately, most of the coins, there's a nice picture. And if you've got a touch screen on your thing, you can blow it up and you can look at it, and you may not be able to see if there's rub on the coin or figure out necessarily the grade, but you can do the variety. Another piece of advice, every time I see a coin on eBay that's a rare coin, an R6 or R5 plus or something, first thing I do is attribute it to make sure it really.
Desperately expensive coin.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of my collection.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I remember getting foil pressings from John, and then eventually, I went out and I got my notary press and converted it and put all the stuff on there. So I never did do it as well as John did. And you got them from John, they were already in the nice plastic 2x2 holders, so you weren't going to smash them all up and everything. And at least for my level of manual dexterity, it would take 3 or 4 pressings before I could get one in one of those holders. But yeah, I agree. That was an outstanding way for us to be able to see a coin that we could probably never purchase or maybe not even see if we didn't go somewhere to a major auction.
So he encouraged me to buy what I could afford.
Absolutely.
So I've told somebody, my collecting is even a dog needs a good home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bill.
On the foil pressings, that's also a good way to keep the collection that you had and sold.
Mm-hmm.
Foil
Mm-hmm.
pressings of my entire half-set collection.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't have anymore.
Well, plus you might not want to have all those coins in your home, but you could have the foil pressing. But now with coin photography, and I know you're going to talk about that tomorrow, we don't necessarily have to make foil pressings anymore because we can take outstanding photographs of our coins and have those on our iCloud or wherever they are, so we can pull them down and take a look at
They're
them.
not 3D.
No, they are not 3D. Yes.
Just one more comment
Sure.
on mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we used to do during the reception that took place last night is we used to ask the first-time convention attendees to recognize themselves, just stand up and
Mhm.
raise their hand. And that did a couple of things. Number one, it allowed people those of us who've come to conventions for many, many years, we tend to socialize with each other because it's like a college reunion with people that we see only once a year. But it also gives us the opportunity to recognize new people and reach out to those people.
Absolutely.
So if you are
Absolutely.
a first-time attendee here, then make yourself known.
Yep.
Visit with people. Most of us don't bite. So, and many of the authors of the reference books are here in attendance. So make yourself known to those people, and it'll help your collecting. It'll prod along to a tremendous extent.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah, Dennis.
There's a way of collecting that Maurice Sperber of Legend Numismatics is very, very interested in and recommends. You were talking about sets, variety
Mhm,
sets, big
mhm.
sets. Her idea is what she calls the box of 20.
Yes.
As it turns out, I didn't know where the 20 came from. There are 20 slots in EAC.
Yeah. Yep.
Fill those slots one at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and each coin to go into the slot has to have a reason to be there.
Yeah.
It turns me on and I like it. It's absolutely a satisfactory reason to do that.
Absolutely. And if you see a coin, it's also, there's a little self-discipline there, because if you see a coin you really want, you go, which one of my 20 am I going to get rid of to put this one in there? Thanks, Dennis. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming and attending my talk. And do you need to do something with my PC before? Okay. Yeah, I thought so. Thanks.
That was great, Bob. As I said before, we have another great talk coming up at 2 o'clock, and It's about a collection that all of you have heard about. Somebody who put together every coin, every U.S. coin, versus another collection that probably nobody's ever heard of. Where did this guy get his coins from? Where are they dispersed for now? You'll enjoy it at 2 o'clock.